Ladies and gents, welcome to the stream. Mr. Businessman ready for his workout. Got a workout straight after this. So I thought I'd, get dressed up, make myself look good for you, try and, get that sportiness. I know on the Mr. Businessman channel we don't really instill sportiness because I'm not really into sport at all, but, I thought today is a sporty day, so I've got my thing on ready for my workout. So I hope you're keeping well. Hope you're keeping healthy. I'm ready to do some intellectual heavy lifting, shall we say? We're going to talk about purchasing and stock control today. And I'm going to talk about the news later on as well. Don't know what's been happening in the news. It changes every day at the minute, doesn't it? It's absolutely all over the place. So we'll have a look at that as well. But Friday. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to another week in lockdown. Another week done. Another week closer to, getting back to the normality and being able to go out for a meal. That's what I miss. What do you miss about not being able to go to places? I'll tell you the two things I miss, right? Number one is going out to restaurants. I miss that. I like going out in restaurants, even if it's just to sit in a restaurant and watch people, let them know that I'm watching them. Hiding in bushes. But the another thing I miss as well is just seeing people. Just going and being around people and stuff like that. Which is, I haven't missed it that much, to be honest. I don't really like people, to be honest. It's a bad line of work to be in, really, isn't it? Teaching if you absolutely hate people. My students are all right, but vast majority of people, just the human race, are a bit annoying, aren't they? So anyway, let's get on to some purchasing and stock control, shall we? And because I know you're ready to go. I know you're so excited about this that I know you've been inundated with emails about purchasing and stock control, and how excited they are about this coming up and things like that. Can't get my camera right today. Just trying to get it where I want it. Is that right? Looking good with my hat, Anyway, we're going to jump straight into it now. Stuff with purchasing and stock control as well is, and I found this about some of these topics, is they're not. I want to reiterate the fact that the stuff that we're doing here is kind of the basics. If you want to look into more depth about them, then that is a really good thing to do. This is the bare minimum. This isn't an all-encompassing course. To replace everything you would do at college. This is like a revision as thing that does explain it and hopefully goes into enough detail, and we discuss it to an extent, don't we? But in class you would have the opportunity to discuss, and you would have the opportunity to do a lot more, do activities, do the exam prep, which is really, really important for it as well. So don't forget to do that if you are watching these and you're not practicing the questions and things like that. Please make sure that you are doing those questions, because you don't want to, especially with this lockdown and that, you don't want to come to the end of this and then think, oh God, I've forgotten how to do my exam prep and stuff like that, my exam technique, because it just screw you over essentially by the time we actually get back into it. All right, so we're gonna have a look at purchasing and stock control anyway today. Really important thing for business. I feel like I say that every stream, but it really is. Like every topic we do is individually important, and they're all interconnected, as we know, in business. So let's have a look at what we're going to talk about today. Well, it says, explain the importance of purchasing and working with suppliers, explain what is meant by stock control, understand the importance of controlling stock, explain methods of stock control, including traditional stock control methods, just-in-time and computerized stock control, interpret stock control diagrams, and explain the main components, including reorder level, lead time, buffer stock, and minimum stock level. Hopefully you'll already know what those things are, but we will recap them. Evaluate the importance and impact on businesses and their stakeholders of holding too much stock or too little stock. And there's our friend, the stakeholder, rearing their face, as always, as we do every day. Okay, so let's have a little look at what it's actually asking us for here. So we've got our explain, interpret, and evaluate. They're the things that they want us to be talking about today. But they've also got things like understand the importance, to be able to evaluate the importance and things like that. Remember, that's going to be those higher order skills, isn't it? That's the more difficult things to think about when you are talking about these skills, these abilities to be able to be able to bring these out of yourself, essentially. All right. And not just in terms of holding too much stock as well, but also too little stock at the same time, because there's it's two ends of the same spectrum, isn't it? So let's get into it. So first of all, should Tesco order 1,000 of the following products? Is it risky or safe? Now, I want you to think about these from two perspectives, because remember, being a good business student is all about understanding things in perspective, and some of these would be more applicable to the situation than not. So let's have a think about here and now. All right. So would it be worth it, these? Okay, so let's have a look. We've got toilet roll. Would toilet roll be worth 1,000 of these at this moment in time? I think definitely yes, because of the current situation, the rush on toilet roll. I think it's eased up a little bit now, but there was definitely a rush on it. It would have been a surefire way to make a profit. It's a really good idea to do that. What about these? Is it Jamie Vardy? Is that the guy's name? I'm not into football at all, but it looks like football shirts and things like that. Would it be particularly, important for them to do it at this moment in time? It would be not sensible, would it? Because people aren't going out and buying things like that. People are specifically. We've been reading over the last couple of weeks, aren't we, about companies like Asda, who've been specifically trying to screw over their the suppliers by not paying them for things like clothing, because the market is completely dried up and people don't want to buy them. So usually, I think it depends on the circumstance, doesn't it? Who does this guy play for? But whichever football team he plays for, if it was the hometown of that place and they have a big demographic for it, then probably that's not a bad idea, is it? For someone like Tesco. And it would depend on the circumstance, like, if there's a World Cup on it, or if there's a Premier League or whatever it is. I don't know much about sport at all, but I've heard these buzzwords. If there's a big tournament on and people are particularly passionate about football at the time, then that would probably be a good investment, wouldn't it? Because you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to sell them through. We've got Endless by Frank Ocean. Frank Ocean, not really that sure. Is he the guy who goes no, 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 no? There's a guy. I think he is the one who sings like that. Sings like he can't open his mouth properly. So really, really lazy singing. I like it. Actually, I like some of his stuff. I like the one. Is it Frank Ocean who did that thing with he does lots of collaborations with people, doesn't it? Like I know, like I'm saying, like, oh yeah, Frank Ocean. I have no idea who this guy is. I think it's the guy who's really lazy singing anyway. Big demographic though, well liked. Would 1,000 copies of it? The only problem would be if you're buying copies of this, is the case of whether the demographic would actually go and buy these products anymore. In physical media is dying, isn't it? We like to stream. We have Spotify and things like this anymore, so that would be taken into account. Nivea Sun. All right. So what about suntan lotion, sun cream? It would depend on the seasonality of the product, wouldn't it? And whether it was particularly sunny. If it had been last week, I would have said yeah. There was a couple of days where I put sun cream on because I'm very, very light, as you can see. I burn like a twig if a twig burns. And what about these things at the bottom as well? Hoverboards. Do you remember them before they made them illegal to use anywhere? Now you just see really, really rough families using them. But I'm annoyed about that though. In terms of the these people on TV where you see like really, really they always make out these people really, really rough families with all the best stuff. They've all got like mini motorbikes and stuff like that. They're all driving around on or like like Dodgem things that they're driving around on. I'm jealous of that. Two really rough kids looking like. Like they're not owned by anyone, but they're driving around on a little moped. That's pretty cool. I'm disappointed that isn't me. But yeah, so we'd have to be looking at the situation. I don't think it would be sensible to buy hoverboards now because they've gone out of vogue, haven't they? But there was a time when everybody wanted one of these things. You don't see them around very often at all now. You might see the odd kid, not an odd kid, but you might see the odd kid driving down the road on one of them, and you're not allowed to use them and stuff like that, aren't you? Although I think I've only ever had a go on one once. I should have another go on then. They look like the kind of thing I'll fall off though. So anyway, in terms of Tesco, you've got to think about a couple of things for these, haven't you? You've got to think about the sell-through likelihood. You've got to think about the demographic that you're going for. You've got to think about the seasonality, and you've got to think about the likelihood, the situation, what is happening here and now. Is there a seasonality to the product? Is there a particular thing going on in the world, like the second option? Is the guy really really popular at the minute? Is it really really good weather? Is there a fad? Whatever it is, they will all implement and they will all significantly impact on the likelihood of you should go with this product or not. So that's Tesco will be doing this all the time. They've got specific people. They've got a whole team. Or teams and teams of buyers who specifically, will do this, and they'll trial products and things like that as well. Okay, so keep that in mind when we're talking about it, all right? So first of all, let's have a look at stock control. So what is stock control? Well, the definition of stock control is managing the purchasing of stock to ensure there is enough when needed and that it is effectively stored. Now, we know the issues with stock control, don't we? We know the issues of keeping too much stock because we talk about it a lot on the stream about how much there is an issue with holding lots of stock. And I've talked about the fact of I don't understand how B&Q are able to continue operating when they're holding so much stock, because it doesn't seem to make any sense to me to do that when you're competing with people like Screwfix who can keep their costs down massively. Managing the purchasing of stock and ensure it is enough when needed. So we've got to it's the right amount when needed. It's not having loads extra when we don't need it. That's the critical point about this. So it says we've got underneath here, we've got raw materials to work in progress to finished goods. We don't want to be holding too much raw materials. We don't want to be holding too much work in progress stuff that isn't finished, and we don't want to be holding too many finished goods. We want to be having just enough raw materials that we can do stuff, just enough work in progress stuff that is, ideally, do you remember we're talking about, just in time production and things like that, which we'll cover in a second, but companies only selling products that they've actually, or rather only making products that they've actually already sold. That's a really clever way of doing it, isn't it? That's a brilliant way. If you can do it, imagine if Apple could do something like that, where they only make an iPhone. If you've bought an iPhone, they don't just have loads of stock handed over, and they do eventually have loads of stock, and things like that, because they don't always. They sometimes underestimate or overestimate how much demand there will be, and there's only so much we can do to really, batten that down in terms of market research and stuff like that. So with these three different bits, raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods, we just want to make sure that there's the right amount at the right time, essentially, so that we can do what we do and not be restricted. So, okay. Question: identify and explain two benefits of effective stock rotation at a supermarket. So what is stock rotation? Well, stock rotation is about moving your stock, your old stock and your new stock. And it's more important for perishable goods than it is for non-perishable goods. Because non-perishable goods, you can have stock rotation based on seasonality, features of the product and things like that. But in terms of, perishable goods like milk, like food, it's really important to actually rotate the stock out consistently, because that means that your old stuff is going to the front and the new stuff is going to the back. And I know a lot of people will go to the supermarket, actually go behind one and actually reach behind and get the old ones, because they know that the ones with the later sell-by dates will be on. But why do they do this? Well, they do it to try and sell the products that have got the shorter sell-by dates. Why do they do that? Because it makes no sense to them to not do that, does it? They need to be making sure that they rotate the stock consistently to be able to make sure that there's lots of stuff on the shelf, but also make sure that there is a decent supply, but also that the most needed, the most perishable goods are sold first. It doesn't always work, and there's loads of stuff that's always left out over there. The ones that you see get these little yellow stickers on that say discount and things like that. So to avoid that, really, because costs are going to go up if we end up doing stuff like that, aren't we? So if you see people like this lady here going in and reading the labels, or you might do it yourself, read the labels of things, it can be quite considerable. It can be like a week or two sometimes difference. Not with milk, but some perishable goods, there can be a couple of weeks difference between, the one at the front and the one at the back. And you want to get good value as well, don't you? So it's stakeholder conflict, isn't it? The company wants to sell the ones with that they need to get rid of, and you want the one that's going to last the longest. So it's a difficult one. So big thing for this one, big benefit is actually being able to sell the stuff, not make sure that they don't perish. Hopefully they won't have loads of stock left over of stuff that's going to go bad, that's going to essentially going to have to be thrown away. And they also so they ensure that the right thing, and it also maintains a consistent stream of produce, doesn't it? In the right place at the right time, selling the right thing. That's exactly what we want to be doing. Um, and it also, I think, effective stock rotation also leads very well into making sure that we've got the right products at the right time, because it also makes us re-establish how many things are being sold all the time. We haven't really talked about EPOS, but remember electronic point of sale, where when you scan things, it keeps a track of it and keeps track of your electronic things like that. We'll talk about them in a minute, but essentially that's what they do. When they have the checkouts where you beep the thing, it keeps a track of reorder levels and things like that to reorder a product. So if we have effective stock rotation, it means that we're going to be able to consistently maintain that stock levels as well to be correct, and also be able to track sales data and things like that. So there's quite a few different ones of why we'd want to do it. So too much or not enough. The main causes of stock wastage are overproduction. So when we say overproduction, that's when there is too much production. Doesn't over satisfies the demand. Remember, demand is being willing and able to purchase a product, not just willing or not just able. That's why Ferrari don't have unlimited demand. Products becoming out of date or obsolete. So if we've got perishable goods, we've got that. We talked about planned obsolescence the other day with companies specifically building obsolescence into their product ranges so that you will have to buy another one. Very clever way of doing that. And if you've got the brand image and things like that, then it will make sure that you want to buy other ones and things like that. We've also got damages. We need to appreciate that there will always be damages, especially in supermarkets and things like that. They are well aware that things get broken, and everything. It's not just supermarkets. Everyone knows that. Currys will know that occasionally a TV will get dropped or something like that, and things like. So they will be aware of that, and they will make that allowances for that in the projections, or they should be doing. Inaccurate forecasting. We've already talked about a lot about these, about how they're having the right people so that they're unbiased, and having the right information can hopefully help us get correct forecasting, because if we use it wrong, then it's pretty useless, isn't it? Trend changes could be massive, especially for something like the Jamie Vardy kit or the hoverboard. If it's not cool to like Liverpool Football Club or whatever it is at the minute, or they're particularly doing particularly well, then interested. Like for me at the minute, I've been watching this thing on Netflix called the Last Dance. I don't know if you've seen it. It's got it's about Michael Jordan. It's about the Chicago Bulls. It's brilliant. I'm really interested in that, and they're cool. It's so cool. I'm not into sport at all, but Michael Jordan is a cool guy, and I love the way they look as well. In terms of the kit and things like that. I need to buy some stuff. I had a look, but it's dead expensive to get the jerseys and stuff. But it's cool. That's probably how people feel about footballers and stuff. But I've never really felt like that about footballers. But it's very cool. If you've not had a look, The Last Dance on Netflix, very very cool, very interesting thing. It's coming out I think weekly at the minute. But yeah, interesting. Have a look at it. Anyway, lack of storage space as well. We've got to. We essentially had to get rid of stuff because we'd nowhere else to put it, so we might have to put it on discount, we might have to just get rid of it, we might have to throw it away. Depends on the perishable, whether it's perishable or not. All right. Okay, so stock control. Now, we talked about EPOS a second ago, but computerized stock control is really important. Automatically reorder from a supplier using an EPOS system. An EPOS system is an electronic point of sale. An electronic point of sale is directly above me to that lady there. She's using an electronic point of sale. What that does is when you scan it, it automatically takes one from the stock control in the back, and it reorders when we need them. And the suppliers will automatically get pinged for that. Now, when we're talking about just in time, if you remember when we're talking about production of cars and things like that, an EPOS system was absolutely vital to make sure a just in time production works, because the EPOS system pings the supplier to say we're going to need this at a certain time. So it really is quite vital to make sure that everything works effectively and things like that. EPOS has really revolutionized stock control, really. The method is useful as humans are not used to, use as part of the process. However, there are potential problems. We have got the issues of what if have you ever been into the supermarket and the person doesn't scan them all separately, the products? You have to scan things separately. It's really important that, because even if you scan, even if you've got two different types of like shredded wheat, they are two different products. So if you've got shredded wheat with honey and shredded wheat with almond, if you just do the shredded wheat with almond twice, oh yeah, well it's shredded wheat, isn't it? No, it isn't, because the whole system's going to get messed up now, because now it thinks that you've sold two lots of shredded wheat with almond, and that you've still got, so you've got to reorder one shredded wheat almond, and you've still got shredded wheat with honey or whatever I said on the side. That's no good, because that isn't true, is it? So it's going to mess up the whole system. And then you see these supermarkets as well that after a while they do stock takes. They actually check the stuff to make sure that they've actually got things, because they know about damages and mistakes and things like that. We've also got problems with things like internet process, and we know with the stream and that sometimes the internet goes down, and it's really frustrating for me that. But you know that can be a major issue for these as well, because it relies on electricity, it relies on connection, it relies on internet and things like that. So if there was ever issues with things like that, then that could completely ground the whole system, couldn't it? I think also as well is there is a tracked tracked information about the company here, and if a competitor was ever to get their hands on your data from your EPOS system, that would be invaluable information for them. That would be brilliant, because they could see how you're doing, what you're currently spending loads of money on, what your best sellers are, what your kind of stuff. You're going to try and keep that information quiet, but if anybody was to ever come across that, or be able to hack the system and get access to it, could potentially be quite harmful to it, couldn't it? So we've got the mistakes, we've got the fact that we're relying on technology. That there's a number of things here, isn't there? And any other things that sort of apply to the situation. That's one of the really good things about business. I know that we've already talked about it, but the fact that on the examining, when you see the examiner's reports, it says, or credit any other relevant information a lot of the time. So in which case, if you come up with a piece of relevant information, I always say to my students, yeah, that's totally fine. As long as it's relevant, I can give you credit for it. That's fine. You don't have to always use my examples, as long as it is relevant. So let's have a look at this one. Now, there's two. This is a stock control chart, by the way. There's a stock control graph or a stock control chart, and really, really important piece of information. This, because we've got. This is how you physically show how stock works in a business. All right. So there's two different ways of looking at this. We've got the just in case and the just in time. Now, we've talked about just in time before, but we haven't talked about just in case. Just in case is the more traditional way of doing stock control, and that's, we want a certain amount of what we call buffer stock. So let me just grab my pointer. I'll show you here. So we've got a certain amount of this buffer stock. Now, buffer stock is an amount that we always keep in the business. We always keep that the same, and we always keep a certain amount in the business, just in case we get a run on it, or we need a certain amount just to keep us tied over. So we never go below that amount, however much that is. All right. So let's just go through these of what it is. Let's explain what it is. So we've got our stock level here. All right. So this is how much we've got on the left, and time. You can see that our stock level starts here, and as you can see, over time we're getting less and less and less until we hit this buffer stock level. All right. Now the buffer stock level is really important to remember, and it is something that. We can change that. It depends on how much buffer stock. It depends on the situation about how much we need. And we've also got sort of a minimum amount of stock that we want, which is this level here. That's the minimum that we ever want in it. The top here is the maximum that we've ever got, and that could be for a number of reasons. It could be out of choice. It could be to do with capacity. So this is the maximum we ever want in the business as well. And also, this blue line here is, because it's to do with time, is at what point do we reorder things. So if we want to be ready here for our stock to jump back up here, then we're going to have to reorder it here. Okay? So let's just run through as an example. These are loaves of bread. We start with our 1,000 loaves of bread. We go down here, and then we realise, we're at 500 loaves of bread here. We're gonna have to order some, because if we get down to 200 loaves of bread, we always want to have a buffer stock of 200 loaves of bread, and then we'll reorder some more. So when we get down to our 500, we place the order, and this can be done physically or it can be done electronically. A lot of the time, it's done with an EPOS system now. But we go down here, it clocks that we've got to reorder level. We reorder it, making time as well, giving enough time that we know that we're not going to run out. Okay, because there is an amount of time, and that's called our lead time, the amount of time it takes us to get from our reorder to our to the point at which it's delivered, and we can push that stock back up again. All right, so it looks something a little bit like that. All right, so just to reiterate what we're talking about, so we got the maximum stock level here. We start with the amount that we've got, the total, the most that we've got 1,000 loaves of bread here. We start with our 1,000 loaves of bread. We start selling. We get to 500. It doesn't have to be 500. It could be any number. It depends on whatever the product is, or whatever we want it to be. Reorder is triggered at 500, and the 500 takes a little bit of time. Let's say 2 days or whatever it is, a week or whatever, to get to this bit, the minimum stock level. Now, the minimum stock level is the minimum that we want to be keeping. All right. Now, that changes for just in time, but this is the buffer stock. So we can go into the buffer stock if we needed. If there was any delay on this, or if there was something going on, it doesn't matter, because we have got a little bit of buffer stock just in case. You see why it's called just in case? It makes sense, doesn't it? And then, as you can see, as soon as we hit that, it shoots straight back up. All right. Now, in the exam, you might get a question about reorder quantity. Now, the reorder quantity is the difference between your minimum stock level and your maximum stock level. It's nothing to do with this bit. It's to do with the amount between the minimum and the maximum in terms of how much do you physically put back in the business, how much did you actually physically reorder here. And it confuses people in the exam sometimes, that. But as you can see, it's quite simple. So take a screenshot of it or something like that. I just thought I'd do that so that you can have me on the screenshot if you like. But take a screenshot of it, put it up somewhere so that you can remember how it works. But very, very simple way of doing it. So let's have a look at the benefits and disadvantages of that. So 3 reasons to hold buffer stock. Okay, so number 1, it takes up warehouse space, but the cost of stock holding is reduced. All right, so there is. Oh no, wait a second. Have I put these the wrong way around? Have I put these the wrong way around? I'm not sure with these, unless it was unless we had to divvy them up, because that one would go over there. That one would go over there. Right. Well, tell you what. It looks like I've just stuck them in because I thought that they were already in order, but it doesn't look like they are. So it's okay. Let's do them together. Here. Takes up warehouse space. Cost of stock holding is reduced. So let's break these down into 2 different ones. All right. So why would the cost of stock holding be reduced if we were to hold stock? Well, I suppose you could potentially say, well, if you could divvy up your cost per product a little bit more effectively, couldn't you? So if we you could say, well, actually, the amount of fixed costs we've got, we could divvy it up between products, or potentially we could say the cost per product is less. Reasons not to hold would be because it takes up space. Let's put that over here. It does, doesn't it? It means that we can't use the space for other things. Money tied up in stocks could have been spent somewhere else. Opportunity costs. I think I have. I think I've just put them on the wrong side, haven't I? I'm gonna flip them over. So don't you worry, I've got you, and I'm not the best teacher ever, so don't worry about that. Money tied up in stocks could have been spent elsewhere. Opportunity costs. So we've got a problem with that. That is something that we need to be aware of, isn't it? Large stocks subject to deterioration. Yeah, I've just put them on the wrong side. They're just on the wrong side. Okay. So let's get these. So a lot of faith in Reliance Liberties, but buying may be lost. There we go. Live planning lessons. There you go. I mean, you don't get that on other places, do you? People who are more more reliable with their information. You don't get that kind of stuff, do you? So let's go back through them. Okay, so this is a difficult one. Cost of stock holding is reduced. I don't understand of that. In terms of that, you could say problems of holding if you don't hold it. Let's get rid of that. I don't really understand that, but ultimately you could reason it out that if you hold less stock, that you reduce the cost. It seems like a bit of a moot point, to be honest. But anyway, a lot of faith in the reliability and flexibility of suppliers. So I don't know. These all seem to be quite negative. Have I done them wrong again? Bulk buying advantages may be lost. No, I think they are. But they all seem negative. Let me just check that I've not. Where did I get I got these off the workbook, you see. Let me just double check these. Listen, I'd rather give you the right information. I was sure that these were right, but these all seem negative. Let's have a look. I've put the negative stuff. Oh right, sorry. I'm just talking about in the right. Yeah, the I'm just talking about them in the wrong context. They were right to begin with, I think. Let me put them back. Ta-da! That was good, wasn't it? Really good. That I'm gonna have to put a thing to say. Just skip to the end. But let's go through them anyway. All right. Sorry about that, but as I said, I'd rather be right than wrong and tell you the wrong information. So, what we're saying here is explain 3 reasons why businesses would not hold buffer stock. All right. So, because it takes up stuff. All right. So, again, I think we just need to divvy these up a little bit. But it takes up warehouse space, money tied up in stock. So, some of these are in the wrong place. I'm really annoyed. This is ridiculous. I'm fuming. I'm absolutely fuming. I'm gonna put them in the correct place for you now. Okay. So first of all, you know what I'm gonna do? How has that happened? How have I done that? Takes up warehouse space. I think I've just put them in the wrong place. I haven't I? A lot. Have I? I don't get it. It doesn't seem to make sense. Every time I look at it, it changes. Explain 3 reasons would not hold buffer stock. 3 reasons to. Well, they're the same thing. 3 reasons a business would not hold buffer stock, and then identify 3 problems of not holding buffer stock. It's a very complicated way. 3 reasons to hold and 3 problems. Right, I'm going to get rid of all these. Forget all this. Pretend this never happened, will you? Mr. Businessman isn't infallible. All right. Let's do it together. Let's just figure it out, because you know what? That's okay. We can do this together. So what we will say couple of it, so problems of buffer stock. Then what are we saying? Well, we're saying 3 reasons to hold it. Well, 1, you can react better to changes in seasonal demand, can't you? You can change, if there's changes in fad, or you can change in other things of demand. You can effectively change to those things. So it improves your flexibility. It allows you to adequately, you can make better deals, I think, a lot of the time. Not necessarily economies of scale the same, but you can kind of use economies of scale with your customers as well, because you're going to have some stuff, and you can kind of be more reliable because you've got that capacity to be able to. You can be known as those people who always have stock, which is really, really good, isn't it? We've also got the idea of sort of having that competitive advantage as well. It sort of adds a little bit of competitive advantage, doesn't it? Of having the stock and being ready to react quickly in certain situations. You can take advantage of situations. What about problems of holding it? Well, there is an opportunity cost, isn't there? There's an opportunity cost of not holding the stuff, because you can essentially say, well, if we keep this stuff, then we're not using that space for something else. We're not using that capital for something else. We're not using that capacity for something else. So that's a big one. Another problem of holding is you're going to have to secure it. You're going to have to insure it. You're going to have to count it. You're going to have to make sure it doesn't degrade. You're going to have to, and it obviously depends on the product, the viability of doing that. And also, I think a main thing is reinvestment. That issue of, what are we doing with this stuff? What are we doing? Is this the best way that we can do this? Is the most efficient way of actually holding this stock? A most efficient way of using our capital at any one time is holding this, especially if, depending on the situation, it might degrade or it might go. Okay, so let's abandon that bit. That was terrible. I apologise profusely for that. But you see, this is the thing. You've got to check. As I said, there's no point in me telling you the wrong information. That looked right. I've got the bits out of the book, put them on there. It looked right when I did it, but I'd rather be mess you around for a minute rather than give you the wrong information. Okay, so let's go back on here. Now, let's talk about just in time. All right, now just in time is slightly different. We know about just in time, don't we? Just in time is only having the right amount of stuff to create the product exactly when we need it. And essentially, this is how it changes the stock graph. Okay, so you can see it's all the same. We start with our stock at the maximum stock level. It degrades until, or whether we sell it until it hits the reorder. The reorder is triggered, and the trigger allows you to go right down to 0 or to the minimum stock level of 0. There isn't any buffer stock held, and that's the main facet. That's the main component, isn't it, of just-in-time production, is the fact we don't hold buffer stock. We don't hold extra stock. So in terms of this, as you can see, problems with this kind of stuff is the fact that you can't react very well to changes in demand. But in terms of this, it's a very, very, if you can get this working consistently, it's a fantastic way of minimizing waste, as we know that's part of it, isn't it, in terms of lean production and things like that. So as you can see, I'll just draw it, but I'll just show you the other one as well. That is the just in case one, if you remember. So we've got this buffer stock here, so exactly the same, but we've got the buffer stock. And then we've got a just in time, which is exactly the same, but just no buffer stock. Okay. Now, with just in time, we've got key requirements of a just in time to operate effectively. We've got a very efficient ordering system. We've got to make sure it is, and that can be done by people, but more importantly, and more usually now, is done by computer and done by electronically. It doesn't have that human element in it. Suppliers that reliably deliver raw materials and components just when they're required. So we need that relationship, really, really good relationship, really strong relationship with our suppliers, ready to go, ready to be able to deliver consistently and when we need them. A well-trained workforce that can be trusted and who are willing to work in teams. Remember, lean production requires people to be constantly innovating, don't they, and trying to make things better, trying to be able to make things efficiently, because there isn't any buffer stock. It means if we make any mistakes or anything, we can't have a redo. So it's important that they know what they're doing and that they do effectively make the stuff for us. A cooperative, non-confrontational culture whereby management encourage workers to achieve their goals and work flexibly. Remember, when we talked about work flexibly and we talked about just-in-time production in general, we talked about the need for employees to feel comfortable with the situation, to feel like they are meeting the demands of the job, feel comfortable that they've got job security, feeling comfortable that they're being paid a decent amount, being sure that they're not going to Kaizen themselves out of a job. There's a range of things here, isn't there? So they need to be able to work flexibly, be able to develop those skills. Perhaps even in cell production and things like that. That might be, a good way of doing this, but potentially it's a way to think about it, isn't it? Okay. Now, let's have a look at this one. So it says questions. You've got these in your book if you've got the book. If you haven't, let's have a look at them together. It says, why is a short lead time important? Okay, let's have a look at this one. Now, the lead time on here, we don't actually have time, but actually on the exam, they might give you a time. They might tell you how long this is, and you'll be able to, respond to that. It says, why is a short lead time important? Well, a short lead time is important because that is the difference between you ordering and actually receiving your good. And we know that lead times actually in consumer stuff like Amazon and that are doing same day delivery now, aren't they? And they're doing drone delivery and all that sorts of things like this. So companies definitely understand the importance of lead time, and we hate it, don't we? If you order something, you want it here and now. I've just ordered a massive collection of Blu-rays, something to do while something to watch in the evenings. And it took much longer than I expected in terms of lead time because of the current situation. But you know that it's annoying waiting for things. That is your lead time. So it's even more. It's more annoying if you're waiting for something to actually. So it's going to stop a production. It's going to stop a project that you're working on or something like that. So what factors could lead to a long lead time? It could be anything. It could be complexity of the product. It could be the infrastructure and the ability for people to get to where to be. It could be external environment, so it could be what's happening in the world, e.g., a pandemic or something like that. It could be massively affecting the ability to be able to get things through, couldn't it? It could be a governmental policy or something like that. Brexit, decisions, things like that have been made. Explain 3 reasons why businesses would not hold buffer stock. Well, they're basically the same as what we've just talked about, isn't they? And identify 3 problems of not holding buffer stock. So I'm not going to go through them again, but the main thing that you need to be thinking about is the ability to react to very quickly changing markets, but also varied with, or rather put against, the idea of holding too much stock and tying your money up in stock and things like that. Okay. So a little bit of a summary here for you. We've got systems for effective stock management, effective relationship with suppliers and customers. We need that EPOS system ready, don't we? But look at what we're talking about. We're talking about stakeholder implementation again, aren't we? We're talking about getting stakeholders on board, understanding stakeholder needs and responding to them effectively. Effective relationships with suppliers and customers, making sure they understand what's expected of them, making sure that your suppliers understand what's expected and are able to satisfy that need. We've got that integration of an EPOS system can make it so much more effective because we don't have the human element and it just automatically reorders things, taking account of the lead times and things like that. We've got effective internal relationships. We need to be able to make sure that customers can adequately get their information to not customers, employees can adequately get their information to their managers and have that kind of two-way information, that they're not frightened that they're not going to be able to work anymore and things like that, and it's affecting that relationship. Customer chain within the manufacturing process, making sure that you remember we talked about having internal customers and treating quality and making sure that quality is there from yesterday's stream. That's part of this as well, isn't it? It's all interchanged. Don't think of them as separate things. The quality aspect is really important as well. Advantages of effective stock management: we've got the reduction in working capital, improved relationship with the customer, freeing up of storage space, less stock wastage and discounting, easier stock rotation and that kind of stuff. It can be really, really helpful to businesses if you can get your stock management, effective and right. But as you can see, and as I demonstrated earlier, it can be quite confusing sometimes. You've got to make sure that you're not just making it up as you go along. Make sure that you actually know your stuff. Check the stuff. And as I said, and that what you can see there can happen in an exam situation. But I hope I've demonstrated what I would hope you would do would be to stop, have a look at the situation, try and re-establish. If you can't make it work, go with something else, because there's no point of going through information. There's no point of saying nonsense in the exam. Although Mr. Businessman's number 1 exam tip is always write something. So even if you're talking nonsense, it's better than nothing. If you do nothing, the only thing you guarantee is 0 marks. At least if you're talking absolute nonsense, you may pick up some marks. You never know. It could happen, couldn't it? Okay. So in which case, just before we get onto the news, I'm going to put some videos in the description for you to have a look at afterwards, but this is the main thing about stock rotation and stock control. Is it better to have too much stock than too little? What I would do with that is I would like you to do 2 arguments for it. Okay, so get a sheet of paper, put that in the middle of it if you want, and do jumps off. So you could do this, or literally plan an answer. Give me the for and against of that, because that is a brilliant. That could be a 20 marker in an exam. That could be a really big question. It is better to have too much stock than too little. Discuss 20 marks, 25 marks, something like that. So a very big question, and it's an easy question to an extent, that, because it allows you to really run with it and give your own spin on things as well. But it requires you to understand why people would keep stock and why we might not need stock. So the perishable goods versus non-perishable goods, the fact of capacity utilization, the fact of tying up money in stock, the idea of securing it, insuring it, that kind of stuff as well is really important, isn't it? So there's a lot of different avenues you could go with this, but I'd be interested to see. So literally, just have a go at that as an exam style question, as a long one. Write it as a big one. Write it as 20 minutes. Give yourself half an hour. Write about it and see what happens, because it's such a broad question that this would be a fantastic example of something that they would give you in the latter parts of a third exam of a business course, or potentially degree level stuff. You could go off with something like this as well, and really, really broad, just throw you in the deep end and see how it goes. So have a go. All right. Okay, it sounds simple, but even the big businesses get this wrong. So we're going to have a little look at some of these. Let's have a look. Oh, okay. Here we are. So it says, Lego admits it made too many bricks. There's Jackie Chan. Danish toy maker Lego has reported its first sale decline in 13 years. It says too many Lego bricks is a problem many parents will sympathise with, but now the toy firm has admitted itself it's made too many. The company said its sales and profit had fallen for the first time in 13 years, blaming the weak performance and having to sell off its excess stock cheaply. A Lego spokeswoman said it was too much stock in its warehouses and shops. There wasn't enough room to get 2017 toys into stores, and the toy trade has been driven by newness. The Danish toy maker has been dealing with the stock issue, as well as a drop in sales in Europe and North America had dragged down its performance in the last year. So, I mean, it shows big businesses can get it wrong as well, can't they? That's a really important point to understand. That's ready for the news in a second. Let's just have a look at this other one. Oh, yeah. Do you remember this one? Chicken Chaos as KFC closes outlets. It says KFC has closed more than half its 900 UK outlets after delivery problems meant they ran out of chicken. This girl here looks particularly upset about that. Last week, the fried chicken chain switched its delivery contract to DHL, which blamed operational issues for the supply disruption. It was unclear that the delivery problems would be rectified, a KFC spokesperson said. Workers have been encouraged to take holiday but would not be forced to do so, he added. Our teams are working flat out all hours to get the rest back up and running as soon as possible, but it's too early to say how long it will clear the backlog. It said that the restaurants opened by the chain, staff on short-term contracts would be paid an average hours working day over the past 12 weeks, while those on salaries would be paid as normal. However, 80% of KFC outlets are run on a franchise basis. Franchisees are seeking to own independent advice. This was very much like the pandemic thing at this situation that we're in at this moment in time, where companies were freaking out. So you can see the far-reaching effects that stock control can have. If you're not able to sell things, then you're unable to sell things, aren't you? It's not an easy thing to do, and it's not an easy thing to control either. So if you mess this up, it can be massively detrimental. Let's have a look at the news anyway. We're already here, so let's have a look at the news. It says, let's have a look at this one. So it says, Ryanair says refunds can take up to 6 months as it axes jobs. This is the real impact, isn't it? This is external environment hitting businesses now. Let's have a look at these things. It says Ryanair's boss, Michael O'Leary, has said it could take up to 6 months to refund passengers for flights cancelled because of the coronavirus pandemic. There is no reason for them to do that, by the way. The reason that they're doing that is because they need to be able to have working capital in the business, isn't it? There's no other way of them being able to continue to run. If they gave up all the actual physical liquid cash out of the business, then they've no way of continuing the business. It says he told the BBC the airline was struggling to process a backlog of 25 million refunds with reduced staff. However, he pledged if you want a cash refund, you will receive a cash refund. It's set to cut 3,000 jobs, 15% of its workforce, as restrictions to cope with the coronavirus crisis. He said 3,000 posts under the threat were mainly pilots and cabin crew jobs. There's going to be a lot of pilots out of work, isn't there? Which is a weird one because they're a very, very niche job. There are likely to be pay cuts of up to 20% of the remaining staff the airline added. That's insane, isn't it? Talked to a friend of mine this morning. He said that he's having to take a small pay cut. Only 5% he was talking about, and we were talking about the legalities of them doing that and the contract law and that and stuff like that. And I don't think it's as simple as them saying, oh yeah, we're just going to give everyone a pay cut, because I don't think it works like that. But it will depend on the situation and, you know, how people respond to it, won't it? It says that he told the BBC that the planned cuts were the minimum that we need to just survive the next 12 months. He said that if a vaccine was not found, we may need to announce more cuts and deeper cuts in the future. There will be eventually, or we'll find a way of dealing with it. We will have to find a way around it. Ryanair said it was expected to report a net loss of more than 100 million for the first 3 months of the year, within further losses in the second year. Now, we know the importance of net profit, don't we? That is actual true profit. That's not good. You know, that's really going to hit into return profit. It's going to hit into any sort of value of the company. In the side swipe at rivals, it said that return to scheduled services would be rendered more difficult by competing with flag carrier airlines who will be financing below cost, selling with the benefit of over 30 billion in unlawful state aid, in breach of both EU state aid and competition rules. So he's saying that people like British Airways and people like that are being given unreasonable treatment by the government and giving them subsidies to keep them going. He described airlines such as Lufthansa, Air France and something else as subsidy junkies running around Europe hoovering up the state aid. Well, all right, sounds like someone crying about it, to be honest. I bet he wishes he was still in the EU, doesn't he? Yeah, maybe he would get some subsidies as well, but we're not, so he needs to get on with it, doesn't he? This is the problem with that, doesn't it? It's the reality of the situation. Let's have a look. US Spy said it was not clear how the outbreak began, but Mr. Trump says it came from a lab. Oh, did it? Thanks for that. He's coming up with some nonsense, this guy, at the minute, isn't he? He's coming up with all sorts. He's probably seen a movie. Is that Contagion? In fact, we're not had a look at the news. Let's have a look at the papers. We've never done that. Let's have a look at the papers. Britain past peak of virus. PM to offer lockdown exit map next week. Plan to cover the economy and schools. Government to support. Right. Well, I don't know how they could possibly know that, but that's a little bit worrying, isn't it? But okay. So it says Queen's special message to hero Captain Tom. It's like we're seeing the Second World War, isn't it? At last, we're past the peak of the virus. Britain is now past the peak of the coronavirus outbreak, he declared last night. Couldn't possibly know that. Couldn't possibly know it. We're not even testing. We're not even up to the necessary testing. So how could we possibly know that, Boris? Insane. We're past the peak. Yay! Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, give key workers a pay rise as a thank you, not as a thank you, as a reflection of what they're actually doing. I think would be a fairer thing. Pay the NHS what it's reasonably due. UK public will be told to wear face masks. I thought they said that face masks didn't work. This is frightening. I don't know about you, but or the sun's gone with penny pinch posh Becks down. Daily Star. ITV gets Corona Jungle jitters. I'm a celeb and Love Island facing the axe. Good. Goodness me. Sorry, I'm just reading now, aren't I? There's no point in you watching a video of me reading the news in terms of physically reading it. Oh, well, this is important, isn't it? Greg's shop U-turn over sausage rush fears. It says bakery chain Greg's has said it plans branch reopenings next week will now begin behind closed doors. The sausage roll supplier is fearful that the risk of excessive numbers of customers may turn up. I totally agree. And people are idiots, Greg's. People are morons in this country. So please, and not just this country actually, the whole world has showed itself up to be full of idiots. So please be careful about opening stuff up, because people are going to cause a bloody peak in virus things because of this nonsense. Earlier this week, it announced plans to reopen 20 stores in the Newcastle area from Tuesday on a trial basis. However, Greg said the reopenings will now be to test our operational safety measures and will not allow customers in. Many fast food fans have been starved of their favourite food. Or boo-hoo, people have died. Is it just me? Is it just me that realises the severity of the situation? People are physically dying. Like, it's mental. This is absolutely insanity that people are still not taking this seriously. And Boris Johnson's part of that. I mean, the guy was talking about, everybody's got to make their own decisions. Everybody's got to shake people's hands and stuff like that. And then he got ill himself. Oh yeah, we're past the peak now. Everybody can relax. Stop saying stupid stuff to the general public, because Joe public are thick by the sounds of things. They're more interested. Oh yeah, well, I'm going to go to the pub, me. Oh yeah, I'm going to have a pasty, me. Well, come on, people are dying. Please be careful about doing anything like this, because people are just silly. It says, due to significant interest in our 20-shop trial and the risk that excessive numbers of customers may plan to visit Greg's, we will now initially operate these trials behind closed doors. Good, because people can't be trusted, can they? People can't be trusted. That's the point of this. Let's do one more before I get angry. Antivirus cars, what's this? Car makers in China are tapping into the health concerns by launching vehicles with antivirus features. New models aim to provide the same level of protection inside the cabin as wearing a face mask. Some of the country's biggest car makers have launched new cars with features including Geely, which also makes London black cabs. The first launch antivirus methods building on earlier work. Its Healthy Car project aims to stop any tiny particles entering the car, potentially protecting drivers and passengers from harmful substances. Good idea. I mean, bit of innovation is what we like to see. Let's finish with this one. It says the government will release a series of papers next week outlining its approach on how to safely and gradually restart the economy. It invited submissions by Thursday from businesses, trade bodies, unions and other workers' representatives on how they're best to slowly start restarting the economy, but the proposals will be split bluntly by sector by working environment, but there's no confirmed date of which the start will occur. Unions, large firms, business groups have been consulted on 7 areas: outdoor work, non-food retail, transport and logistics, manufacturing, indoor work, work in the home, hospitality and leisure. The situations where workers may be required to be closer than 2 metres, the guidelines may insist on mitigating measures such as wearing protective masks or clothing, or where possible, work back to back rather than face to face. Yeah, brilliant. Back to back rather than face to face. Yeah, let's try that. But yeah, so I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. We're going to go back to college, and I'm going to face the wall when I do my teaching, because I'm not looking at you all. Because I mustn't, because think of it though, right? If we go back to college now, that makes no sense. It doesn't make any possible sense, because what, I'm gonna have to wear a face mask, a visor. I'm not even gonna be able to be there, aren't I? Because, as I said, I've got a 1-year-old. I can't put him at risk at this moment in time. I don't trust the government with this current situation. It's a crazy situation that we're in, but it doesn't instill me with fear. Sorry, it doesn't instill me with the confidence. It instills me with fear, with what they're thinking of doing. But anyway, I hope I find you well. I hope I find you interested, and I hope it's been useful for you today. Sort of carrying on. Thank you for joining me. I will see you on Monday for some more Mr. Businessman. We're doing really well, by the way. Thank you very much for continuing working with me. Yeah, okay. So peace and love and that. I'm going to go and do a workout. You should go and do a workout. You know, and when Boris Johnson said to get an hour's work, it was mandatory. He will be coming round if you don't. Yeah. And after that, we can all go down to Greg's and get a pasty. Peace.